Have you ever felt like a product you bought, maybe, I don't know, a smartphone or an appliance, just conveniently seemed to stop working? Or maybe it got frustratingly slow, like
hmm
right after the warranty expired?
hmm Or just when the shiny new model hits the shelves.
Exactly. It almost feels, well, intentional, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay, so today we're really going to unpack that feeling. We're diving deep into something called planned obsolescence.
Right.
So basically what we're talking about is this deliberate strategy. Manufacturers actually designing products with an intentionally limited lifespan.
Yeah, it's not just, things naturally wearing out over time. This is a conscious decision
Yeah.
made during the design, during production,
And the main goal seems pretty simple, really. It's to encourage you, the consumer, to buy replacements more often.
which stimulates sales, keeps the revenue flowing for the companies. It's a core part of the business model for many.
So in this deep dive, we're going to peel back those layers. We'll look at the subtle ways this actually plays out.
Yeah, and it's not all bad for everyone initially, anyway. There are some surprising economic arguments, but also, well, really significant environmental and ethical costs. Huge costs.
Costs for all of us.
Exactly. And we'll even touch on how this idea shows up in cutting edge academic research. It goes way beyond just the phone in your pocket or the washing machine.
Okay.
If you connect it to the bigger picture, you'll see just how pervasive this practice is, how much it impacts our daily lives and the world, really, more than you might think.
Okay, so let's nail down this definition first, this deliberate cycle. Planned obsolescence means products becoming outdated or just, well, non-functional after a certain time.
Not by accident. That's the key. It's by design.
Right. And it gets really interesting because it's not always just about things breaking down, is it?
No, not at all. It's often much more subtle. You might see components that seem designed to fail just after the warranty, or
Yeah.
maybe software updates stop being supported for older models, or even just, designs, aesthetics that look dated really quickly, pushing you towards the newer look.
So it's kind of insidious sometimes.
It can be, and the methods manufacturers use are often quite hard for the average person to, pinpoint.
Like what specifically?
Well, think about non-replaceable parts. Or parts that are really difficult to replace, like batteries glued into phones or laptops.
Oh yeah, that's infuriating.
Right. It makes repair super impractical, or maybe even more expensive than just buying a whole new device.
Hmm.
Another classic is software updates. Sometimes they seem to intentionally slow down older
I
devices.
think a lot of people suspect that happens.
They do, and it gently nudges you towards upgrading. Or manufacturers might limit spare parts availability or just not release repair manuals.
Creating barriers, basically.
Exactly. Barriers to extending the life of the product you already own. And the immediate impact on you. Well, it's frustration, obviously, and often a financial hit from having to buy a replacement so frequently.
Yeah, it's easy to get annoyed, and I think rightly so.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's play devil's advocate for a second. There is an economic rationale behind this, isn't there? For the manufacturers, at least.
Oh, absolutely. From their perspective, it drives the market.
Right. I mean, while it's tough on your wallet, maybe it does push innovation. Companies are kind of forced to develop new features, new tech, to tempt you with the latest thing.
That's the argument, yes. Constant demand requires constant innovation, or at least the appearance of it. And it keeps production lines busy, which, contributes to jobs in manufacturing and related sectors.
So there's that side.
There is that side. But, and it's a big but, we have to immediately pivot to the huge negative consequences.
Okay.
The environmental impact is, well, it's staggering. This constant churning out of products, replacing them quickly, it leads to an alarming increase in waste.
Especially e-waste, right? Electronic waste.
Precisely. E-waste is a massive problem. It often contains hazardous materials, heavy metals, plastics that don't break down, and all that puts a tremendous strain on our landfills. There's also the risk of soil and water contamination if it's not handled perfectly, which it often isn't.
So, environmental disaster looming. What about the ethics of it?
Yeah, that's another huge dimension. You have to ask, is this fundamentally a deceptive practice? Does it undermine the trust between a consumer and a manufacturer?
You buy something thinking it will last, but maybe it's designed not to.
Exactly. Are you actually being deprived of the full value of your purchase? And then there's the social justice angle, too.
How so?
Well, think about who's most affected. It often disproportionately impacts lower-income individuals or families who really struggle to afford frequent replacements for essential items.
Right. They can't just buy the new model every year or two.
Absolutely not. Now, companies often defend the practice, citing profitability pressures, the need to stay competitive,
Standard business arguments.
pretty much.
Yeah.
But the ethical questions, they don't just go away. They're pretty fundamental.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about phones, appliances, the stuff in our homes. But you mentioned earlier this idea goes beyond just consumer goods. It's actually discussed in academic circles, in industry.
Yeah.
So what does this look like when we kind of zoom out? What's the bigger picture?
That's a great point. Because this concept, obsolescence, it's so fundamental. It's actually a really active area of research. You see it popping up in economics, environmental studies, industrial design, all over the place.
Okay, like how?
Well, take data, for example. In fields where information needs to be current, like, say, healthcare.
Crucial.
Absolutely crucial. Researchers are developing really sophisticated ways using things like Bayesian networks to detect outdated or even contradictory information in real time.
So like in a database for tracking maybe falls in the elderly, making sure only the relevant current data is used.
Exactly like that. Ensuring systems operate on knowledge that hasn't become obsolete, which could be dangerous.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Then you look at the industrial world. Think about complex systems with really long life cycles, power plants, aircraft, manufacturing lines.
Things that need to last decades, ideally.
Right. And they rely on countless electronic components. So now there's research using AI, specifically deep learning, to get better at forecasting when specific components might become obsolete.
Not just fail, but become unavailable or incompatible.
All of the above. It helps companies manage these long-life systems better, predict problems, avoid costly shutdowns, prevent supply chain nightmares when a tiny critical part just isn't made anymore.
So managing obsolescence becomes key to efficiency and longevity there.
It's absolutely crucial. And even more broadly, some academic work explores this fascinating idea that innovation and obsolescence are like two sides of the same coin.
How do you mean?
Well, they argue that these are both fundamental forces driving change, not just in technology, but in social systems, even biological evolution. Innovation gets all the attention, but obsolescence, the process of things becoming outdated or non-viable, is just as powerful in shaping how systems adapt and evolve.
Huh. That obsolescence is often overlooked as a driver.
Exactly. It's seen as just a negative side effect, but maybe it's actually a core mechanism of change itself. It really shows how deep this goes, way beyond just, your toaster breaking.
Okay, wow. So let's bring it back down to earth a bit to some concrete examples people might recognize.
Sure.
You mentioned sealed phone batteries earlier. That's a big one, right? As the battery degrades, and they all do.
They inevitably do.
It often pushes you towards getting a whole new phone because replacing just the battery is either a huge hassle or super expensive.
Classic example. Or think about maybe less obvious things. Like sometimes manufacturers use plastic gears in appliances, say a washing machine, where maybe a metal gear would last much longer.
Ah, right. So it works fine for a while, but that plastic part is kind of designed to be the weak link.
Potentially, yes, leading to premature failure. And then there's the whole ecosystem strategy. You see this with companies like Apple.
The walled garden?
Sort of, where the hardware and software are so tightly integrated, it can really limit your choices. You might need to upgrade your phone just to use the latest app features or connect to a new accessory. It kind of forces your hand.
Right. So these different examples, they seem to fit into different types or categories of this obsolescence idea.
You do. And drawing from the research, we can kind of break it down. First, you've got what we could call design-based obsolescence.
Okay, so that's the plastic gear example.
Exactly. Products literally designed with intentionally limited durability, parts made to fail or just not built to last.
Got it. What else?
Then there's fashion-based obsolescence. Think clothing, maybe even cars to some extent. Products designed to be trendy.
But then quickly look dated or out of style.
Precisely. It drives demand for new stuff. Even if the old items are perfectly functional, you just want the new look.
Right. And the third type?
That would be technological obsolescence. This is where products are designed maybe to be incompatible with future technologies, or they require constant, often costly upgrades just to keep working properly or to access new features.
Like software no longer being supported on older hardware.
Exactly. That fits right in there.
Yeah.
Understanding these categories helps see the different ways it manifests.
Okay. And all of these, regardless of the type, they lead to some pretty significant challenges and criticisms, don't they?
Absolutely.
I mean, from your perspective as a consumer, it can really feel like your rights are being violated,
Yeah.
your choice is limited, you're kind of pushed into making unnecessary purchases.
And then there's the huge environmental costs we talked about. All that e-waste, the resources used to make replacements.
Mhm.
It's just not sustainable.
It feels incredibly wasteful.
It is. And economically, even though it might drive sales short term, you can argue it leads to massive inefficiencies in the long run, wasting materials, energy, human effort, potentially driving up overall cost for society.
So given all these problems, what's the legal situation? Is this even allowed?
Well, that's the tricky part. Generally speaking, there isn't like a universal global ban on planned obsolescence.
So manufacturers are mostly free to do it.
Largely, yes. It's often framed as just, product development and marketing strategy. However,
There's a but.
there is. We are starting to see some movement. Some countries, particularly in Europe, are beginning to implement regulations or at least guidelines
Aimed at what?
aimed at tackling this. Things like requiring manufacturers to design products with more sustainability in mind, better recyclability, or improving access to repairs and spare parts. The right to repair movement is gaining traction.
Oh, the right to repair. Yeah, I've heard about that.
It's a growing counterpressure. But it's still early days in terms of widespread, effective regulation. It's a slow-moving ship.
Okay, so wrapping this up then, planned obsolescence. It's clearly a really complex issue. It's got these, undeniable economic drivers for companies.
Powerful drivers.
But at the same time, these profound environmental costs and pretty serious ethical questions for you, the consumer, and for the planet as a whole.
Definitely. And while companies, understandably perhaps, defend the practice, citing profitability and market demands, there's this growing counter-movement.
Right, pushing for more transparency, that right to repair we mentioned, and just generally more sustainable, durable product design.
Exactly. And as you, the consumers, become more aware of these strategies, start recognizing them, it really raises a powerful question, I think, for the future.
Which is?
What kind of pressure will this growing awareness actually put on manufacturers? Will it be enough to force them to genuinely adapt, to prioritize real longevity and sustainability, maybe shifting away from this model of planned obsolescence towards something more like, planned durability?